Benchmark, the voice of business. Presented by LMD.
On this edition of Benchmark, a well-known personality in the design sphere, Nela De Zoysa joins us in the studio to give us her expert views on architecture and interiors. The LMD Nielsen Business Confidence Index picked up by 14 basis points in August. Nielsen's managing director Sharan Pant explains the reasons for this recovery. And in our final segment, LMD columnist Deshal Dimel assesses Sri Lanka's macro outlook. That's the lineup for Benchmark.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Benchmark. I'm Savitri Rodrigo. Our spotlight guest today needs no introduction. A well-known figure in the architecture and interior design sphere, Nela De Zoysa will give us her expert opinion on the architectural landscape as well as interiors. The chairperson of the Nela De Zoysa Design Corporation, she in fact is the first Sri Lankan to win the coveted Arcasia Gold Medal and also has won the South Asia Commendation Award among a host of other awards. An active member of Arcasia. She is a member of the Royal Institute of British Architects since 2011, the Royal Australian Institute of Architects, she is a member there as well as the Royal Architectural Institute of Canada and the Institute of Indian Interior Designers. Welcome to our program, Nela.
Thank you, Savi.
Now, when you look at the architectural landscape in Sri Lanka,
Yes.
what do you see?
Well, if you consider just simply the Gold Road, I mean, several years ago, what we had was facade architecture. But today, we find that, the quality of work is improving. And I think our architects are doing a, very good job.
When you look in general, do you feel that we are imbuing standards and best practices as we go on?
I think so. We are definitely, I mean the quality of work is improving. And some of the young ones are also doing very great work, which are perhaps not known.
What would you attribute that to, actually?
Well, the two schools of architecture. The Morato University, which came into being before the City School of Architecture. Both are credited to the RIBA, and they're doing very good work. And they're producing very good architects.
And if you look at trends that are emerging in the field of architecture, what do you see? For instance, there's bespoke housing, renovations, open concepts, living spaces, flex rooms, insides and outsides merging into one.
Yes, I think we have a lot of inside and outside merging and courtyards and courtyard architecture because the country's climate, lends itself to that kind of patterns of work.
If you look around the world where there is dense population, what would you see as the trends that are in lifestyle living?
Well, I've just come back from Singapore and I was amazed at their public housing. There's one called Pinnacle and there was another called, I think that was not, Pinnacle was public housing. But there was Interlace, I think Rem Koolhaas had done. It was like a set of containers put together. And very interesting, very interesting. But I'm sure, their apartments also ought to be taking this kind of thing into consideration. Unfortunately, I couldn't see any of the apartments.
Speaking of trends, when it comes to interiors, what are you seeing? What do you think will come forward?
Well, in office interiors and corporate interiors, basically corporate interiors, there's a lot of open plan now. The time where you put people into cubicles are non-existent unless confidentiality has to be maintained. So a lot of open plan, airy kind of interiors would be the ideal thing.
And what about homes?
Homes, still I would say, the people who can afford to build their own house, who go for the gardens, and even in a small 10 perch or 6 perch plot, they would still go in for a small courtyard, or the rear space is a mandatory thing which we have to keep depending on the height of the building. But yeah, the courtyards are there, and it depends on the skill of the architect to make the maximum.
What about color schemes of the kind of furniture people use?
Once again, for apartment dwelling, you see, you have to confine yourself to, unless it's a very large apartment, whatever you can buy, rather than design it, go to an interior designer or an architect who would design it for them, optimizing the space. Obviously, apartment dwelling is limited space. You don't have the space, unlimited space.
Are Sri Lankans still focusing on heirloom furniture, and you remember there was a trend like that?
Yes.
Is that still prevalent?
It is, I'm sure, but possibly what is nice is to mix it up with the contemporary. Just have a couple of pieces, rather than making them, all, using that kind of antique furniture. But still, I think lots of people do use them, depending on the styles of the houses. But still, even the modern contemporary houses, it's nice to keep a couple of pieces and mix it up. I mean, that's the skill of the architect.
Hot topic, sustainable practices in architectural and building processes.
Right.
Are we incorporating it enough? Do we have enough knowledge to put it out there and actually have the real thing?
Well, Savi, that is a question which I have also wondered. I don't think half the people understand what sustainability is. I think it has to be taught in schools. It's a very important thing. It's like restoring the environment of toxic gases. So we have to start at the school level. I think sustainability has to be taught in the schools of architecture first, so that the students understand what sustainability means. Because when you talk of sustainability, it's the building materials you use, the building process. It's not only the function of the building. It's a whole gamut of things which they don't realize. Just putting some greenery on a building is not just being sustainable.
So we'll get back to that discussion in a little while, Nela. We're taking a short break for commercials now. Later on in the program, Nela De Zoysa assesses the current crop of talent we have in the country and also gives us her thought on the future skyline of Colombo. Stay with us.
When we entered the industry in 1995, a new star was born as a fully owned subsidiary of People's Bank. For those seeking to grow their businesses, PLC provided the seed. We are not only Sri Lanka's #1 leasing company, but also the largest non-banking financial institution. Welcome to a new dawn for the nation. Introducing People's Leasing and Finance, PLC. We understand that savings provide for life's special moments. That's why we were the first bank to introduce an incentivized savings scheme, Pathum Vimana. We changed how a nation felt about savings. because we believe in banking beyond transactions. HNB, your partner in progress.
Welcome back to Benchmark. We are continuing our discussion with Nela De Zoysa, who is an honorary fellow of the American Institute of Architects and won a commendation award at the very first Jeffrey Bawa Awards way back in 2008. Nela, just to ask you, getting back to this discussion, there's a lot of talk about smart cities around the world. Cities run on technology, the urbanization of cities because of this technology. Now Sri Lanka will eventually, hopefully if plans go well, by 2030 we will have smart cities in this island. How will plans to develop these smart cities actually impact architects and the industry?
Well, first of all, I think we have to get our infrastructure in place before we think smart, because otherwise I don't think the smart cities could work. You see, technology needs infrastructure. So I would say first things first.
What do you think the advantages will be in having smart cities in this island?
Of course, I mean, it would help all the people, all the inhabitants of the country having a smart city. And of course, they have to be smart enough to be able to use it as well.
And for the architects, are they equipped to handle such the technology? Do we have enough knowledge among the industry?
We ought to be, everything, with time, things change. You see, we have different systems which will come in. Now, I know certain countries have something called BIM 6, which is an architecture package. I think in Singapore, they insist on it. All kind of proposals which go in for the various authorities, the government expects them to be on BIM. So similarly, I'm sure technology will come into Sri Lanka, where all the architects will be using various, advanced systems.
Nela, when you look at our architecture industry, what are the key challenges that face people like you?
Well, knowledge, the exchange of knowledge. I think we can widen our knowledge. I think lots of people now travel and they see what's happening in the other countries. But, I suppose, architects, most architects, it's only a percentage who would travel for work or to widen their knowledge. Most of them go on these package tours, which is just touristic stuff, but if they are exposed to, the real architecture of other countries, I think, that's really phenomenal.
What about things like resources? You can design as much as you want, but if the resources have to be imported or difficult to get, how does that work? How do you design if you have those limitations?
Today, with the internet, you can source anything and get it. And right now, I'm doing a building, and I'm a person, when I design, Savi, I like to do something new all the time. Something which would be, a cynosure in the environment. So therefore, I'm always looking for things. I would sort of get the contractors to go and source it out and things like that. So of course, if the palette is limited, then also it gives a chance for the architects to be more creative rather than having a wide palette.
Nela, how would you rate the current crop of talent we have, knowledge-wise, exposure-wise, experience-wise, and also are they able to service what is emerging in the market?
Savi, extra knowledge from developed countries will never go waste. But it's very unfortunate, sometimes a lot of our people become very insular and they become insecure. But how I look at it is, I think we should welcome all these, the architectural firms will come, come into a country to do the buildings. However, they have to be associated with a Sri Lankan architect to practice in Sri Lanka.
Looking at, yeah.
So it's, I would say, we should be able to, extra knowledge is always welcome. It never goes waste.
What about pay levels within the industry, professionalism, and also even brain drain? How much has it impacted your industry?
Yeah, it has impacted us quite a bit because, during the past, all our skilled workers have gone to various countries, especially the Middle East. So, what we are left with, the craftsmen are not there anymore.
Nela, what about pay levels? Is it adequate, what is being paid within the architecture industry?
I wish it was more so that we could pay the staff more. But very often the client comes for a bargain. He always bargains, or he wants to get it at the best price. So when you do that, we also have to make things ends meet, and run the offices profitably.
There's so many major projects coming up in the island. Lots of infrastructure, lots of projects in the hotel industry, financial services. Do you believe that our local architects and our interior designers are leveraged adequately enough to handle this?
They are, but always I personally feel that collaboration from a developed country would help, for them to think new, with a new palette of materials and all that. So we shouldn't, use it as a threat. We should, in fact, I personally would, feel very, I would love to work with that kind of, in that environment. Then you learn.
If you looked at the skyline of Colombo maybe 10 years from now, what would you see, Nela?
I'm sure we would see, better designed architectural buildings rather than the facade architecture which we saw, 20 years ago. So, form follows function. So whatever the building is, it should, say what it is.
There's also the downside, and lots of people worry about whether the existing infrastructure can actually take all this mega development that's happening.
That's what I started by saying. Before you talk of technology and smart cities, we have to get our infrastructure intact.
How would you like to see the city of Colombo?
Well, it's lovely to see, the country developed. And especially when you travel, you see, I saw an amazing change in Singapore after 2 years. So, that shows the speed of, what happens there in that country. But, it's lovely to see, Sri Lanka develop as fast as the other countries do. But of course, the resources.
Thank you very much, Nela. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you very much, Savi.
We have been chatting with Nela De Zoysa, award-winning architect and interior designer. And on the other side, do stay with us because we have Anushan Selvaraja with more.
Sri Lanka's #1 leasing company is now the nation's largest and highest rated finance company with 2 international ratings. Let us move the nation as one with People's Leasing and Finance PLC. Sri Lanka's #1 leasing company is now the nation's largest and highest rated finance company with 2 international ratings. Let us move the nation as one with People's Leasing and Finance PLC. Nearly 60% of all businesses in our country are SMEs. Some of our most growth-oriented financial solutions have been customized to serve this sector. That's why we have invested over 500 billion rupees to support the backbone of our economy. Because we believe in banking beyond transactions. HNB, your partner in progress.
Welcome back to Benchmark. I'm Anushan Selvaraja. Now for a closer look at the latest on the Business Confidence Index, and joining me is the Managing Director of Nielsen, Sharang Pat. Welcome to the show, Sharang. Now to start off with, the BCI is up by 14 basis points now. Well, what are the reasons behind this recovery?
Yeah, the BCI has moved up 14 points in the month of August. It's gone back to its level of 140 from May 2016. One of the reasons behind that is the reversal in increase in VAT from the government. The businesses feel it's a good move and they hope to see increases in their sales volume in the near future.
Alright, now in terms of our economy then, what do respondents have to say? How do they feel about our economy?
The negativity or negative sentiments on the economy are still there. Almost about half the respondents still feel it's not a good time to invest into their business. Just about 20% of them feel that the economy might improve in the near future.
Where do they stand in terms of business and investment prospects?
About half the respondents feel that the economy might improve in the coming 12 months and therefore it could be a good time to invest. But if we talk about short terms, a lot of the respondents are still wary about investing because they're still looking for some positive moves from the government which will help them improve their productivity or invest into the business.
Now Sharang, you've been in the country for a little over a month now. Now based on what you have seen so far and where the BCI is at this point of time, what would be your predictions for the future of the BCI?
Yeah, well, with clarity on the VAT and the foreign exchange rate remaining stable, we expect BCI to remain at this level of 140. Unless there's a major trigger, a positive or a negative, we do not expect BCI to move up from its current level or move down from its current level.
Thank you very much for joining us, Sharang.
Thank you.
That was the Managing Director of Nielsen, Sharang Pat. We'll be right back after a short commercial break with the latest on the economy. Stay tuned.
When we entered the industry in 1995, a new star was born as a fully owned subsidiary of People's Bank. For those seeking to grow their businesses, PLC provided the seed. We are not only Sri Lanka's #1 leasing company, but also the largest non-banking financial institution. Welcome to a new dawn for the nation. Introducing People's Leasing and Finance, PLC. Gami Pubudua, our microfinance offering, makes it possible for the youth of this country who have a viable business plan but lack the funds to realize their dreams. We are committed to grassroots level entrepreneur development because we believe in banking beyond transactions. HNB, your partner in progress.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Anushan Selvaraja. Now for a closer look at the latest on our economy. Joining me is LMD columnist Deshal Dimel. Welcome back to the show, Deshal. Now, just to begin with, just tell us how our import and export sectors are faring at this point of time.
Yeah, Anushan, the first half of 2016, it's been a bit of a mixed bag. From the export perspective, we've seen a decline of about 5% in the first 5 months of the year. And again, pretty much across the board except for apparel, there's been a decline in exports. Apparel has still remained in the positive territory, about a 5% growth for the first 5 months of the year. But even so, in the month of May, there was a decline in apparel exports as well. So hopefully that trend won't continue through the rest of the year. But most of the other export sectors have been on the decline. In terms of imports, again, it's been relatively static for the first half of 2016. Consumer imports have by and large declined, non-food and food as well. On the non-food side, vehicle imports have declined quite a bit, which is expected with the changes in some of the taxes and also the increase in interest rates. But some of the other non-food consumer imports have still continued to be increasing, particularly some of the white goods, electronics and so on, probably due to the continued the lagged effects from the consumption boom that we saw in 2015. But as the pass-through effects of the increased interest rates filter through, we're likely to see that coming off during the second half of 2016 as well. So in general, we've seen imports being relatively stable in terms of consumer imports and in terms of intermediate. There's been an increase though on the import of investment-related goods, that's like construction materials, building materials, and other machinery and equipment and so on. And that's a positive because that's an indication of future potential investment growth. And that I would see as a good kind of indicator for potential economic activity in 2017 and the second half of 2016 as well to some extent. And so that is, and that also has been reflected in the investment figures that have been coming in the data that came in from the BOI in June, showed some positive improvements in FDI in the second quarter of the year, and so that again is a fairly good indicator of some positive directions going forward.
What about a current account, Deshal? Are we doing a good job of managing it?
So with the exports and imports both being relatively on the negative side, the current account has remained relatively in balance, but a general slightly negative in terms of the trade balance. But there's been strong positives coming in from tourism earnings. As you know, for the first 7 months of the year, tourist arrivals have increased by about 16.7%, which has been quite strong. And concomitantly, tourist earnings also have been increasing quite a lot. So that has been a very good kind of positive impact on the current account balance. Remittances also have been doing better than last year. Still not very strong growth in spite of being off a low base. But remittances are also making a positive contribution to the current account. So in general, the current account has been doing reasonably in a reasonably stable manner in the first half of this year.
In terms of our monetary policy, Deshal, are we heading in the right direction, or are we at least pointing in the right direction?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the central bank has taken some fairly good early measures in the new governor's term. We saw an increase in rates at the end of the July monetary board meeting, and that was really a preemptive attempt to prevent future a good signal indicating a commitment to macroeconomic stability and also to control future inflation threats. And I think that will be received quite well by the global economic community and the investors also. And what the central bank has been doing is really to try to lean against some of the laxity that we're seeing on the fiscal side, particularly with regard to some of the uncertainty related to the implementation of some of the tax measures and so on. So that it was important to have a fairly strong position taken on the monetary side to be able to counter that, and that has taken place. In the most recent monetary board meeting, they decided to hold interest rates stable, and I think that trend will likely continue because we've already seen market interest rates going up quite a bit. PLR is now at almost just under 12%, so that the effects of that will feed through to the market, and we'll see general moderation in credit growth as well in the second half of the year. So I think that in general the central bank seems to have got things on track, and the direction looks quite good.
Thank you very much for joining us, Deshal.
Thank you, Anshul.
That was Economist and LMD columnist Deshal Dimel. Thank you for watching Benchmark, and we hope to see you again next time.